Here with reaction to all this, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. All right, it is chaos everywhere. You have the historical professor. You are the historical professor, and you have that perspective. And my question to you is, all right, what do you make of all of this?
Well, let's start with what you just said about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It tells you how vicious and how cruel Joe Biden is behind that mask of just being a daughter and grandfather. Here he is putting somebody whose father and uncle were assassinated, who clearly meets the requirements for Secret Service support. And what is the justification for Joe Biden deliberately leaving Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at risk? I mean, it just tells you, just as his treatment of Israel, where he is cutting off weapons at a time when Israel is involved in a life and death struggle, every time you turn around, you realize that underneath that pleasant grandfather mask is a vicious, calculating, and highly dishonest person who doesn't mind who he hurts or who he runs over. Now, look, the problem that Carville has and the problem that every Democrat analyst has is simple. You cannot raise enough money to offset reality. The reality is that inflation is terrible and getting worse, and every American knows it every time they go to the grocery store. The reality is that millions of illegal immigrants have poured into this country as a deliberate policy, and that's led to horrendous crimes that individually get publicized in a way that bounces back against Biden. The reality is over 100,000 Americans a year, more than died in the entire Vietnam War, are being killed by drug overdoses, largely driven by the Chinese communists. It's a form of warfare that's real, and this administration has no clue. So every time you turn around, you realize that everything they would like to convince us of falls apart because, in fact, the Biden administration is profoundly wrong about the nature of reality and profoundly wrong about policies that'll work. That's why, as Van Jones pointed out, young people are leaving because they can't get a job. They can't buy a house. Their life doesn't look like it's got a big future. They'd like a president who's optimistic, positive, dynamic. Well, that's Donald Trump. It sure isn't Joe Biden.
What do you make when you add the case in New York, the poll numbers that we see, poll after poll, these demographics, you talked about young people, but it's also African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and then the clear and present danger. You mentioned China. We have Joe Biden, 10 million plus unvetted illegal immigrants, tens and tens of thousands from China, from Russia, from Egypt, Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Yemen, all in the country. I mean, it is a clear and present danger. It's not if in my mind, it's when, and I pray to God I'm wrong. I don't think I am.
Look, first of all, Joe Biden is the most dangerous American president since President Buchanan allowed America to drift into a civil war, which could have been avoided if we'd had a strong, courageous, competent president in 1859, 1860. So start with that. This is a really dangerous president who's doing really dangerous things. That's part one. Part two, this is more than about Trump versus Biden. This is about a sick left-wing establishment that can no longer get the job done. And the whole rest of the country, and the whole rest of the country's figured out their only champion is Donald J. Trump. And so what you're seeing, and you saw this in New Jersey, and you and I talked about it earlier today on your radio show. I mean, other than somebody like Taylor Swift, virtually nobody can get 85 to 100,000 people in New Jersey except Donald J. Trump, and that's because they are rallying to their champion. He's not a candidate. He's the leader of a national movement.
Probably Springsteen, probably Bon Jovi. Have to add those two. And then you add Donald Trump and Taylor Swift, as you mentioned. All right, Speaker Gingrich, thank you.